So I've been seeing a ton of dating advice floating around social media lately, and honestly, a lot of it is just straight up bad. Like genuinely terrible advice that makes dating way more complicated than it needs to be. Now, you've probably heard stuff like don't text back too fast, or you gotta stay mysterious, or to never ever settle. Maybe you thought to yourself, does any of that actually work, or where's this even coming from? Because I've tried to follow some of this advice and it just felt weird and unnatural, like I was playing some strategy game instead of trying to connect. We're going to be going through some dating advice that people treat like gospel but are actually just nonsense, and I'm going to break down exactly why they don't work and what actually does. Because look, dating really isn't that complicated, we just make it that way, so I'm calling out the worst dating advice on the internet so you can stop overthinking it and actually enjoy meeting people. So the first piece of dating advice that's absolutely terrible is to not text her back right away. This one honestly makes no sense to me, especially in today's world where it's already hard enough to tell if somebody's interested in you or not. And now on top of that, people are saying stuff like, don't text back too fast, don't seem too eager, don't come off as needy. I just don't get it. Because if you actually like someone, why are we pretending we don't? Like, in my opinion, if you're interested in somebody and you're intentionally not texting them back to create demand, that's just weird. It overcomplicates something that should be pretty simple. The other person is literally trying to figure out if you like them too. And if they feel like you don't, most of the time they're just gonna go, alright, well, this just isn't worth it anymore, and move on. So all of this stuff, like not replying right away, even double texting, calling too soon, I think it just messes with people's heads for no reason. And honestly, I get kind of fed up with it because real relationships don't usually start off like this. In my experience, it's almost never this constant push and pull. It's usually just one person going, hey, I like you, let's see where this goes. And the other person is either going to be on the same page or they're not. That's it, and that's what usually works most of the time. The next terrible piece of dating advice is if he wanted to, he would. I hate this one so much. Like, genuinely, I think this advice gets thrown around way too much and it just annoys me. That being said, I'll try to not get too worked up about it. On the surface, if he wanted to, he would actually sounds like decent dating advice, and I get where it comes from. You should want a partner who puts in effort, who does things for you, who actually shows up and cares for you, and if someone refuses to do the basic things in a relationship, then yeah, that's probably a problem. So in that sense, I don't think that idea is completely wrong. But the issue is how far people take it. It stops being about the big important things and turns into all these tiny, invisible expectations. Suddenly it's, oh, he didn't buy me flowers for the 14 days leading up to Valentine's Day, so he must not care. If he wanted to, he would. And I'm just sitting there like, what are we doing? That's where it gets ridiculous to me, because yeah, if your partner doesn't do anything for Valentine's Day, no card, no effort, no nothing, doesn't even address it, you're allowed to feel some type of way about that. That's fair. But when it turns into all these micro expectations that they weren't even aware of, that's where this advice falls apart. And this goes both ways, by the way. We act like people can just magically know what we want in a relationship without ever saying it. Like someone is supposed to read your mind or just figure it out, but most of the time, that's not how it works. You can be a really good person, but if your partner wants something specific, like, I don't know, flowers once a month or a date night every week or whatever it is, you actually have to communicate that, because otherwise you're holding people accountable for rules they didn't even know existed. And I think that's the part of the advice that gets completely lost. Our next piece of dating advice is looks don't matter. It's probably one of the worst dating advice I've ever heard in my life. And don't get me wrong, I get what people are trying to say. Of course, looks aren't the most important thing in a relationship or the only thing. There are way more important things like personality, values, how you treat each other, all of that. But saying looks don't matter at all, that's just not true. Because I'll be real, I would have never considered dating my girlfriend if I thought she was ugly. And she wouldn't have said yes to a date with me if she thought I was ugly. That's just the reality of it. You don't even get to the starting point of there's no attraction. Looks matter, they just don't matter the most. And that's where people get it wrong. It's not the thing that keeps a relationship together long term, but it is usually the thing that gets it rolling in the first place. Again, looks are not going to matter at 3 a.m. when one of your kids are throwing up in 10 years, or when you lose a grandparent or a parent. But you're never going to get to those moments together in the future if there's no attraction to begin with. And honestly, looks are super subjective. People are attracted to completely different things. One person might think one celebrity's hot, the other might think the other one's ugly, alright? It just kind of goes. So yeah, looks do matter, they're just not everything. And I don't really buy the idea that anyone is completely ruined in dating just because they think that they're objectively ugly. Attraction is way more flexible and personal than people act like it is. Which brings us to our next piece of advice, which is silly. It's you should be mysterious. This one is just, honestly stupid. The idea is that you should be mysterious. Like, you shouldn't let someone in fully into your life, and you're supposed to create this sense of demand by keeping people guessing. And I'm sorry, but that just makes no sense. Because the only way a real relationship is going to work is if you understand who the other person is. That's literally the whole point. So when people say stuff like, don't tell her what you do for work, you gotta keep her guessing, I just think, why? It's not supposed to be a mystery. It's just weird doing that for no reason. And again, I don't know how this became dating advice in the first place, but it's just really overcomplicating things. If you like someone, you should talk to them. You should let them get to know you, and you should get to know them. That's how connection is built and works. The next piece of advice here is to never settle. And look, I'm not saying you should settle on things that actually matter to you here, like real values, deal breakers, that big stuff. That's important. For example, if you're a Christian and you want to marry someone who also is a Christian, then yeah, stick to that. Don't compromise on that. Or if you really care about how you want to raise your kids, like you're not wanting them to be glued to iPads all day, and you want a partner who agrees with that, then that's something you should be on the same page about. That stuff makes sense. But the way people use never settle nowadays is just unrealistic. It turns into this idea that the other person has to be absolutely perfect. Like if they do one wrong thing or they don't check every single box, it's, all right, I'm out, on to the next one. And I think that's horrible advice because we're all humans. Nobody's perfect. Everyone has flaws. Everyone messes up. Everyone has things you're going to have to work through. At some point, you're going to have to accept imperfections in a relationship. That's reality. Otherwise, you're never going to build anything long term because no one is ever going to meet your standard of perfection because nobody's perfect. And I think that's the part people miss. Relationships aren't about finding someone flawless. They're about figuring out what actually matters to you and what you're willing to work with. The next piece of advice is opposites attract. And I think there's a little bit of truth to this. Like, to some degree, yeah, differences can be interesting at first. They can add balance in certain areas as well, but I also think people overplay this way too much. Because in reality, a lot of the time, people who are similar are the ones who actually end up attracting each other and staying together. Dating, marriage, relationships in general. It's mostly about connecting on the things you do have in common and then kind of balancing each other out in the areas where you're weak. I don't mean completing each other, like you're two broken people making one whole person. I just mean you're better together than you are separately. That's really the point. And sometimes, yeah, you might be different in certain ways, but there are also a lot of ways where you might be similar. Like for me, money is a big one. I care about it a lot for my future and just to be smart with it. So I needed to be with somebody that is also smart with money in the long term. That wouldn't be a fun difference or an opposites attract. That's something I would actually need. I'm thankful that my current girlfriend is actually really good with money, and I think that's something that's just naturally makes things easier between us. I'm pretty good with it too, so we're just on the same page. Again, opposites can attract sometimes, and frankly, there's opposites me and my girlfriend have with each other. However, a lot of the time, similarities is actually what keeps things going. Which brings us to our next piece of dating advice. Love finds you when you stop looking. This is another piece of advice I used to hear all the time when I was trying to date, and honestly, I just never bought into it, and it made me mad. No offense to the people who say it or said it to me, but I think it's kind of misleading. Because yeah, I get the idea behind it, like focus on yourself, improve your life, become someone you're proud of, and that's all great advice. You should want to grow and become someone who's actually a good partner for somebody one day. But this idea that the second you stop looking, love is just going to magically show up to your door, it just doesn't work that way for most people. There are definitely stories where that happens, sure, but there's stories where a lot of that stuff happens. The majority of people need to be more intentional, actually. Put themselves out there more. Go to places, meet new people, and give life a chance. That's usually how you meet people. And I think the problem with this advice is it just creates people to be more passive, which is fine in some situations, but in others, it just doesn't help you find a relationship. So yeah, I get the sentiment behind it, but I don't really agree with the idea that you need to stop looking in order to find somebody. That just makes no sense. And our next one is really important now for long-term relationships, but early on, I kind of agree with. Don't talk about politics early. Like first or second date, I get it. Most of the time, you're just trying to figure out if you even enjoy being around the person. You're talking, joking, seeing if there's a vibe with just normal stuff. But I think the issue is when people take this advice too far and just never talk about the important stuff at all. Because if you're getting into a third, fourth, fifth date, or even a relationship, and you have no idea where somebody stands on politics, religion, money, family values, that becomes a problem. And I'm not saying you have to turn every date into an interview or just start grilling someone right away. That's not the point. But you should at least have a general understanding of who the person is before getting too serious. Because I know way too many people, whether it's dating or even married, who realize way too late that they don't actually agree on the core stuff. Faith, politics, money, how they want to raise a family, all of that. And that's not a small thing. Because real life isn't just about fun dates and good conversations. It's coming home after a long day, sitting at the kitchen table, dealing with stress, dealing with your kids screaming in the other room, dealing with life stuff, and then realizing you and your partner see the world completely differently on things that actually matter. And that's where problems start. So yeah, I don't think you need to bring up politics on date one or any other big conversations like that in general, but I do think it's important to eventually understand where someone stands on the big foundational stuff. Because ultimately, one day, you're going to be building a foundational life with them. Again, life already has enough stress. You don't want your relationship adding more of it over things you could have figured out earlier, even on a first, second, third, fourth, fifth date. But overall, you can listen to a ton of advice from different places, friends, social media, podcasts, whatever, but at the end of the day, I don't think most of it really matters as much as the people make it out to be. A lot of dating advice is either helpful in some situations or completely useless in others. And I think the bigger issue is that we overthink dating as a whole, because dating isn't actually that complicated. It's really just interacting with another human being that you're trying to get to know better and see if there's something there. But we put all this pressure on it. We overanalyze texts, timing, rules, signals, and half the time we're just listening to people who probably don't even have it figured out themselves. And I think most of us would be a lot better off just being a little more natural with it. Like, be yourself is cliche, I know, but actually enjoy the other person's presence. If you guys have fun together, that's a good sign. If you don't, then you don't. It doesn't need to be deeper than that in the beginning. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to this long term. You want to make sure somebody's actually a good partner, that your values line up, and that you'll actually work together in real life, not just on a first date. But if those things are there, there's no reason to overcomplicate everything with these weird rules or theatrics or outside opinions telling you how you're supposed to act. At the end of the day, a relationship is between two people, not you and the entire internet. I think that's what most people forget, because most dating advice isn't one size fits all. What works for some people doesn't work for others, and honestly, a lot of what I talked about in this video probably doesn't apply to all of you at all. It's really that simple. So yeah, I think we just overthink it way more than we need to. It's really that simple. But now that you know which dating advice to ignore, there's one thing that trips up almost every guy: figuring out whether a girl's actually interested or just being friendly. And most people read the signals completely wrong. So check out this video where I break down exactly how to tell if a girl likes you. Because once you stop overthinking all the bad advice, you need to know how to actually read the situation right in front of you.